Hello, Mr. Yumarnamto and all of my friends. Through this video, I'm going to discuss an article about Teaching with an Attitude, Critical Discourse Analysis in EFL Teaching by Joseph M. Kotz in 2006. Here is the outline. So I was trying to rearrange the subtopics into this order, and I'm going to discuss about the introduction of CDA, the critical goals in foreign language education, so how CDA is implemented in EFL teaching and learning processes, and how the critical attitude used in analyzing language use, the introduction of the study, and also the teaching activities conducted in the study. So the first one is the introduction of critical discourse analysis. Based on Paulrich in 2012, the critical discourse analysis, or CDA, is an approach that explores the connections between the use of language and the social and political contexts in which it occurs. So how the use of the language will be influenced as well as influential for the social context and the political context. And these are the characteristics of CDA based on Kotz in 2006. So the CDA sees discourse as a form of social practice, so how the discourse is used in society. And the language use is seen as socially influenced and also influential, as I mentioned before. And it also reveals the connections between language use, power, and ideology. So how different use of language is appeared by the different people of different power and how their ideology also influences their language use. And the aims of critical discourse analysis is the development of the learner's capacities to examine and judge the world carefully and, if necessary, to change it. So the students will be able to think more critically about their or the events and phenomenon happenings around them. And the second is the critical goals in foreign language education. So we'll see the comparisons between the utilitarian view and the critical view of education. So based on Fairclough in 1992, so education is a competence-based model. So it's more like the focus is the knowledge which is trained through the classrooms or through the classes, and the learners are conceived of as specific configurations of competencies and skills. So the focus is how the competencies and skills are taught to the students and how the students can automatically and appropriately perform the competencies and skills. While in a critical view, as listed by Van Leer in 1996, it's more in the lifelong learning skills. So the students are expected to be able to deal with the unexpected events or phenomenon, and they are able to observe them and construct useful knowledge in one's interaction with the world. So how the events or the info they have observed is related to whatever is happening in the world. And they are also guided by internal values and convictions and also reasons, so that at the end they can make informed choices. So they can again examine and judge the phenomenon carefully and critically. Now, the critical attitude that can be used in analyzing language use is here. So in critically analyzing the language use, CDA considers discourse again as a practical, social, and cultural phenomenon. So CDA focuses on the discourse as it is used. And CDA views the relationship where discourse can be influenced and at the same time influential for the context as dialectical. And CDA also distinguishes between local and more global functions, so the pragmatic functions of the skills learned and taught. And here are the differences between the definition of discourse and also later discourse analysis in non-critical and critical view. In non-critical view, discourse is defined as a stretch of language perceived to be meaningful, unified, and purposive. It is also different ways of talking or writing about and structuring areas of knowledge or social practice. While in critical view, discourse is defined as the ideologically determined ways of talking or writing about person, places, events, or phenomena. So the subjects are more clear and detailed. And discourse is a mode of social practice that is both structure and also contributes to society itself. And this is the definition of discourse analysis. In non-critical view, discourse analysis is the description of natural spoken or written discourse, and it is also a study of what gives a stretch of language unity and meaning. While in critical view, the discourse analysis is the analysis of how texts, it can be oral and written, work within specific socio-cultural practices, again, as it is used. And discourse analysis is the explanation of how discourse is shaped by relations of power and ideology, and at the same time is used to construct social identities, social relations, knowledge, and belief. So it's the things that we have learned about the social identity. And Fairclough in 1989 mentioned that discourse is the result of these three different types of practice. So, social practice, where the focus is on the nature of social activity, so how the discourse is used in society, and the discursive practice, focusing on the communicative situation, and the last one is textual practice, focusing on formal and semantic features like grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation. So we'll discuss it later while seeing the examples. Now let's go to the introduction of the study. So CDA considers that language use is questionable and problematic. It reflects social or ideological processes and constitutes at the same time a resource to act upon those processes. So this background is the leading of how the CDA needs to be implemented in EFL teaching and learning processes. And the article aims at demonstrating how CDA can be implemented in foreign language teaching. Thus, later on, there are several practical examples that can be used by EFL teachers or the materials developers to develop tasks and activities which are beyond the linguistic training. Again, they don't want to focus the language as or the education as only linguistic training or similar to the utilitarian view, but they want to go to the critical view where the students can learn the lifelong learning skills. And these are the two teaching activities conducted. So the first one is working with the text. So there is a text used. The title is An Unusual Community, and the stages are the teacher shows a photograph and give triggering questions to the students, and then the students are asked to read the passage and try to find particular information for the task completion. And at the end, the teacher and the students focus on the language components, so the grammar, the vocabulary, the pronunciation, and the intonation. And this is the text. I hope you have already read it because it's quite long. But the points are that the text tells about the different lifestyle of Amish people and the other American people. Well, actually, they are still in the same area in the USA. And the teacher again gives the photograph like this. So they also ask the students whether the students have prior knowledge about how Amish people live, and etc. And this is the common tasks that the teachers or EFL teachers will give to the students. Like the teachers will ask the students to find three things about the Amish and listing what the Amish can do and what they cannot do, while it's actually incomplete or it's non-critical. How to make it critical? We can use the three different types of practice mentioned by Fairclough. And looking at the social practice, teachers actually can ask the students to relate the text with the representation of the world. Like they can compare between the Amish and the typical American people. That's why the question is, are the Amish typical American people? Why? And the students can also find out how the ideology of the writer shapes the textual representation. So the ideology can shape the writer's text or discourse. Yeah, the example of the question is there. In your opinion, who wrote the text, an Amish or a non-Amish person? Try to justify your answer. It can actually be seen through how the writer tells the story or make the text. And analyzing how the text contributes to changing the ideological position of the readers is like asking the students to imagine that their ideology is exchanged with what is it inside the text. And if we see from the discursive practice, we can ask the students to focus on the genre of the text and why that genre or that particular genre is used to convey that message. So the use of the genre chosen. And then the contribution of the different propositions in the text. So it shows how the writer write the ideas or connect one idea to another idea coherently in such a way that the readers can somehow memorize the information without even reading it again. And the reader's knowledge of the world and experience of other texts that the author draws upon. It's also related to how the students can relate the information from the text and also their prior knowledge about, general knowledge around the world. And in the textual practice, where the focus is on the formal and semantic features, so it focuses on the connectors, the modality, and the vocabulary inside the text. So the questions might be like what linking words connect to following ideas, and then how the ideas are presented, etc., etc. So the focus is why those dictions or vocabulary are chosen and why those connectors are chosen. So the use of the semantic features for conveying the message. Now, that's another example of the question. Now we go to the second task, which is a sample task, and it's called easy reading within these 3 stages. So the first stage is pre-task, where the teachers give introduction to the students about the topic, and then in task cycle stage, the teachers give instruction about the task to the students, and then they allow the students to prepare or to plan, and then direct them to perform in front of the class. And in the last stage, language focus, where the teachers and the students discuss about the language focus, about might be the grammar, it might be the vocabulary, it might be the paragraph structure, and they can conclude and apply the skills learned. So the example of the task is a comparative analysis between 2 versions of a part of a novel entitled A Room with a View. So the 2 versions here are, one is the original version and another one is the simplified version. And the goals are to make students aware of the differences in terms of form and content between the 2 versions, so the original and the simplified one, and to present the adapted text as the result of a series of textual choices based on the author's representation. So it means that the writer or the author of the text can relate to the reader's cultural, literary, and linguistic competencies. So let's see here. Again, I hope you have already read the story or the text because it's quite long. But again, the point is that in the original version, the level is more advanced, I might say. The choices of the words, dictions, and also the paragraph structures, there is no orientation of the text compared to the simplified version, which has orientation where the characteristics are mentioned and the story or the situation and the story are explained as well, and then there are also dialogues. So in the pre-task stage, the teachers discuss or introduce the different descriptions given to between classmates and a 4-year-old kid. Like the teachers tell that there are different ways of describing something to different people. Like they say to the students that the students cannot use the description they give to their classmates to a 4-year-old kid. It might be difficult. And in the task cycle, the students are asked to read the original version, the simplified version, and they are asked to find the different features between those 2 versions. And in the language focus stage, the teachers and the students discuss the use of the elements of the language and its relations with the message. Again, here the writer needs to know the level of competencies of the reader. Like if the reader is, let's say, L1 new learners, like English new learners, and so they cannot, or the writer cannot give the original version of the story. They have to give the simplified version to make the students feel more comfortable in reading it and easier for them. But if the reader is in more advanced level, like maybe they are L1 native speakers, English native speakers, and the writer can give the original version of the story. So again, it depends on the readers as well. And how the addresser can construct the identity of the addressee through specific decisions about what to say and how to say. So it's similar to the previous one. As the conclusion, CDA can be used in EFL teaching, of course, as a complementary model for analyzing language use and designing language learning activities. So again, the use of CDA is very beneficial for the students to get lifelong learning skills, not only about the competencies and skills, what is it? It's not only about how the students can perform the competencies and skills automatically, but it's also about how they can use the CDA in their life, like in all situations that they can face or find. And then CDA is expected to arouse the learner's capacity to interpret a text within a specific communicative function, the social and ideological context, and react to it. So they can really have wider ideas or thinking about particular discourses. Can be written or oral. Yeah. So that's all from me. Thank you. Please leave some questions in Bella, and see you when I see you.